Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum dear students. Welcome to the online lecture on nonlinear control systems. Today is our second lecture of the nonlinear control systems lecture series. So we continue our mathematical background discussion from the last lecture, and the first topic that we are going to discuss today is the convergence of a sequence. Remember that sequence is a series of numbers in which the next number from the previous one follow a certain rule. So it's a sequence xn is in some normed space v comma this some defined norm converges to a point x bar if for all epsilon greater than 0 there exists some capital N less than infinity, such that if the serial number of the sequence small n is greater than or equal to this capital N number, then the distance between the sequence number and the convergence point of the sequence is less than epsilon. So I will explain this in a minute what this means. So note that this distance of a sequence number from the point of convergence, this distance being less than epsilon implies that, or is equivalent to saying that the sequence number xn belongs to the ball of radius epsilon around the point x bar. So the notation of the sequence convergence is that limit n approaches infinity, x of n is equal to x bar. So x bar is the limiting point of the sequence. Or we can also say that xn approaches x bar as n approaches infinity. So both of these notions are for this type of a situation. So a situation where for all epsilon greater than 0 there exists some n less than infinity, such that the sequence number beyond the point capital N are closer to the x bar than the tolerance value of epsilon. So for all epsilon means that epsilon could be arbitrarily small. So examples with a normed space of real numbers over the absolute value norm. So remember that absolute value is a norm for scalar real numbers. So first example is that if you have a sequence xn equal 1 over n, then as n approaches infinity, this 1 over n approaches 0. So the limiting point of this sequence is 0. Similarly, you can have another sequence 1 plus 1 over n raised to the power n, and if you have studied basic real analysis, then you would know that the limit of this type of a sequence is the number e, the natural number e. This actually can expand into a binomial type series. Okay, so these are the two examples of a sequence. Now let's look at the graphical representation of a sequence. Let us suppose that we have the sequence xn versus the serial number n, and this is the convergence point, or the point of the point of convergence for the sequence. So sequence could be, there are some points for n equal 1 2 3 4 5, for every value of n there is a point, and after a certain limit, these points start to have almost same value, or the values of the numbers or points in the sequence come closer and closer, arbitrarily close to x bar. So here if we define the boundary epsilon around this x bar, so in order for the numbers inside of this sequence to come within the epsilon boundary of x bar, we can see that here after this point, so after this point capital N, all the numbers in the sequence are within the bound epsilon around x bar. So this is the graphical depiction of this mathematical definition, and this should happen for all epsilon. If I shrink the epsilon, there would be another value of capital N, so that after that capital N, all the points in the sequence will be within epsilon distance from the point of convergence. Next, we look at the Cauchy sequence. So Cauchy sequence is very similar to the converging sequence, but there is a very subtle difference, and the difference is that in Cauchy sequence there is no point of convergence, or at least the point of convergence does not belong to the space in which the sequence is defined. So let us suppose we have a sequence xn in some normed space, and this sequence would be Cauchy if for all epsilon greater than 0 there exists n less than infinity, such that for all the points beyond this capital N, the distance between 2 points of a sequence is less than epsilon. So notice the similarity and the difference of Cauchy sequence from the converging sequence. First of all, in Cauchy sequence there is no point of convergence. Secondly, there are similarities that, for all epsilon bounds we need to find a corresponding capital N, same as we did for the converging sequence. But the difference is that in converging sequence we look for the distance between x bar and point of the sequence, but in Cauchy sequence we look at the distance between any 2 points of the sequence which are after this capital N value. So the fact is that if xn converges to a point, if xn is a converging sequence, then it will always be Cauchy. So every converging sequence is a Cauchy sequence, but every Cauchy sequence may or may not be converging. It will depend upon certain thing that I will describe in a minute. So a normed space is called a complete space if every Cauchy sequence in this space converges. So like I said, Cauchy sequence is very similar to a converging sequence, but the difference is the absence of this point x bar. So for every Cauchy sequence, if the convergence point lies within the space, within the vector space in which the sequence is defined, then that normed space is called complete space. So a complete space is a normed space in which every Cauchy sequence converges. So within the complete space, this will be both ways. Every converging sequence will be Cauchy and every Cauchy sequence will be converging. But if a space is incomplete, then there will be some Cauchy sequence for which point of convergence will not be in the same space. So we will not call the Cauchy sequence as converging, because the point of convergence would have been outside the space. So fact is that every finite dimensional vector space is complete. So usually engineers work with the Euclidean spaces or n-dimensional Euclidean spaces. So all of the Euclidean spaces or finite dimensional Euclidean spaces or any other finite dimensional vector space, they are all complete. And don't get the impression that only the finite dimensional vector spaces are complete. There might be some infinite dimensional vector spaces which are also complete, but if a vector space is finite dimensional, then it must be complete. So you see that every finite dimensional vector space is complete, but every complete space may or may not be finite dimensional. So there's another fact that vector space of continuous functions with infinity norm. So this is an example of infinite dimensional vector space which is complete. So this is a space of continuous functions over an interval with the infinity norm defined for this magnitude of the functions. Then this space is a complete space and it's an infinite dimensional space. Now we look at the geometric representation of a Cauchy sequence, which is very similar to the geometric representation of converging sequence, except that there is no x bar here. So after this point capital N, the distance between any 2 points in the sequence is less than this bound epsilon. So you can see here that for all epsilon, if I shrink the epsilon, the capital N will shift towards the right side, and for all possible, even the arbitrarily small epsilon, there has to be a sum capital N, after which the different distance between any 2 points in the sequence is less than epsilon. Only then the sequence will be Cauchy. If this condition is not satisfied, then the sequence will not be Cauchy. Next we look at the contraction mapping. So let x comma this norm be a complete normed space, and let p be some function from this vector space x onto the same vector space. Then we define x star as a fixed point of this function p if p of x star is equal to x star. So this is the definition of a fixed point. And then we define p as a contraction if there exists some constant between 0 and 1 but strictly less than 1, such that for all vectors x, y in the vector space, p of x minus p of y is less than or equal to c times x minus y norm. So what is this saying is that when you apply contraction on 2 points in the vector space, the distance between the function values of these 2 points is strictly less than the distance between the original points. So that is why we call this a contraction. It basically contracts the distance or shrinks the distance between 2 points. When you apply p on x and y, the distance between px and py is less than, because c is strictly less than 1, so this distance is strictly less than the distance between x and y. Then there is contraction mapping principle. So once you understand what contraction is, then we can go ahead and discuss the contraction mapping principle. That if you have a vector space, if you have a normed vector space which happens to be a complete space, then any function p which is a contraction in this normed space, it will have a unique fixed point within that vector space, number one. So first claim of the contraction mapping principle is that if you have a complete normed space and there is a contraction defined on this normed space, then this contraction will have a fixed point and that fixed point will be unique. And the second claim of the contraction mapping principle is that if you define like a sequence of numbers xn plus 1 is equal to p of xn with any initial condition, so for all possible initial values of this sequence, if the sequence is defined in such a way that the next value is obtained by applying p function on the previous value, then xn is a Cauchy sequence and it converges to x star, which is the fixed point of the sequence. So again, what is contraction mapping principle? Contraction mapping principle is telling us two claims about a contraction in a complete normed space. If you have a contraction in a complete normed space, then first claim is that this contraction is definitely going to have a unique fixed point. Okay. And the second claim is that if you define a sequence in this manner, that xn plus 1 is equal to p of xn, then for all initial conditions, this sequence is always going to be Cauchy and it will converge to x star, which is the fixed point of this contraction. So remember, since the space is complete, the Cauchy sequence is going to be converging. Okay, so these are the two claims of contraction mapping principle. There is always going to be a unique fixed point for a contraction in a complete normed space, and if you define a sequence like this, it is always going to converge to the fixed point of the contraction. Next we look at the a little bit in detail on the claims of the contraction mapping principle. So first of all, contraction mapping principles states that the fixed point is unique. So let's look at this possibility. So let us suppose that we have two fixed points in a contraction, contrary to the contraction mapping principle. Then what will happen is that since both of them are fixed points, x star and y star both are fixed points, then what will happen is that the distance between x star and y star will be equal to the distance between px star and py star. But by definition, p is a contraction, so this distance has to be strictly less than the distance between x star and y star. So there is a contradiction. So since this distance is not strictly it can only be strictly less than the distance between x star and y star if x star minus y star is equal to 0. So this inequality can only be satisfied if x star and y star distance is 0, which means that x star and y star is the same point, or there is, so we prove by contradiction that the fixed point of a contraction is in fact going to be unique. None of the contraction can have two different fixed points. Next we look at the indication of the Cauchy property claimed by the contraction mapping principle. So remember that contraction mapping principle claims that if you define a sequence in this manner, that next point comes from applying a p function on the previous point, then the sequence is going to be Cauchy. Let's look at this fact a little bit, or this claim a little bit. So xn minus xn plus 1 minus xn, this is going to be xn plus 1 is equal to p of xn, and xn is equal to p of xn minus 1. So if we replace xn with the value of with its value using this rule, and replace this xn with the again its corresponding value in terms of p, then we apply the contraction, the definition of the contraction. So applying the definition of the contraction, p of xn minus p of xn minus 1 is going to be strictly so less than equal to c times, c is strictly less than 1, remember, c times xn minus 1. So you can see here that the distance between xn and xn minus 1 is going to be strictly greater than the distance between the next 2 points. So these are the next points, these are the previous points. So every following point has smaller distance compared to the preceding point distance. So this distance, so similarly we can keep going. So c into xn minus 1, we can replace the xn with p of xn minus 1 and xn minus 1 with p of xn minus 2, and we can reapply the definition of a contraction, and then this c will now get another c from the contraction definition. So this will become c square, and you can see here that this xn minus 1 and the distance between xn minus 1 and xn minus 2 times c square, that is greater than or equal to this thing, which is greater than or equal to this thing. So keep going in this way. You will see that c square into xn minus 1 minus xn minus 2 is less than equal to c cube into the previous 2 points, and similarly if you keep going till x1 minus x0, then you conclude that the distance between xn plus 1 minus xn, the point where we started, it is less than or equal to c raised to the power n times the distance between x1 and x0, which are the first 2 points of the sequence. So the c raised to the power n will approach 0 as n approaches infinity. Why? Because c is strictly less than 1. So this is an indication of why the Cauchy property holds in a sequence which is defined by using the contraction function. Next we look at the example of a contraction mapping principle. So contraction mapping principle can be used to solve the algebraic equation ax equal to b. So this algebraic equation is basically the matrix A times vector x is equal to b, where A and b are known, and we want to find the value of x which solves the equation ax equal to b. Usually what happens is that you can if A is invertible, then you can take it on the other side and calculate x by A inverse b. But if the size of the A matrix is large, then it's not so easy to calculate A inverse. Also, if A is not invertible, then there are all sorts of problems in solving this equation. So let's see how we can use contraction mapping in solving this equation. So in order to solve this equation by contraction mapping, we just define a function p of x equal x plus ax minus b. So by defining this the function in this manner, the advantage is that if p is a contraction and it has a fixed point, so this is a complete norm space. So if p is a contraction in this complete norm space, then by contraction mapping principle, p will definitely have a unique fixed point. And if p has a unique fixed point, then that fixed point will imply that p of x star is equal to x star, which means that x star will be equal to x star plus ax star minus b. That means that ax star will be equal to b. So ax star equal to b means that x star is the point which solves the equation ax equal to b. So x star will be the solution of ax equal to b. So you see that by defining the function in this manner, we ensure that if it is a contraction, then its fixed point will be the solution of this algebraic or the algebraic equation ax equal to b. So now the problem is that what are the conditions under which p is a contraction, because in order to have a fixed point of p, we need to ensure that p defined in this manner is in fact a contraction. So let's look at the p in a little bit of detail, that px, if you consider 2 points in the two-dimensional norm space p x and y, then px minus py, the two norm of px minus py, that will be equal to x plus ax minus b minus y minus ay minus b. So that will be the just plugging in the definition of p for x and y vectors. So that will mean that if you do a little bit of simplifications, take out these b terms will cancel out from each other, and you combine y terms and combine x terms, then both x and y terms will have a plus identity as a common. So you can come to this point very easily after a couple of steps. So px minus py will be equal to a plus identity times x minus y norm, which is less than or equal to the induced norm of a plus identity times x minus y norm. So if you look at this and the in between inequality, you can see here that this is basically the definition of a contraction. If you consider this value, the induced norm of a plus identity, as the constant c, which is the constant of a constant that we use in the definition of a contraction, which is between 0 and 1. So this a plus identity induced norm, this is in 2 norm, it is given by lambda max, square root of lambda max of a plus identity transpose times a plus identity matrix. So this matrix will be positive, definite, positive, semi-definite, symmetric. So this is the maximum eigenvalue, take the square root, that will be the induced norm, and P would be a contraction if this induced norm is less than 1, because it's already will be greater than equal to 0, because this matrix is positive semi-definite, so we don't have any problem of this being negative. So we only need to ensure that if this square root of the lambda max is less than 1, then P is a contraction, and if P is a contraction, then you can solve this equation using contraction mapping principle. Fixed point of that contraction will be the solution of differential equation. So in summary, whenever you have Ax equal to B equation and you want to solve it using contraction mapping principle, first of all you have to check whether the induced norm of A plus identity is less than 1. If it is less than 1, then you define P in this way and find its fixed point. Finding the fixed point is easy because you can start with any initial condition and continue with the sequence of xn plus 1 is equal to P of xn, and if you continue that way, then you will eventually reach the fixed point. And well, yes, that's about it. That's how you will use contraction mapping principle in order to solve this algebraic equation. Next, we look at this concept of continuous functions, which is very important in nonlinear control systems theory. Let us suppose we have two normed spaces, V and W, and if we define a function h, which takes a vector from V and operates on it and generates a vector in W, this function is considered to be continuous function at a point x0 belonging to V if the following conditions are satisfied. What are the conditions? The conditions are: for all epsilon greater than 0, there must exist some delta such that if the distance between x and x0 is less than delta, then that should imply that the distance between h of x and h of x0 must be less than epsilon. So what does that mean? We should look at it graphically a little bit, but before that we can rewrite this in the following manner. If x belongs to the ball of radius delta around x0, then this should ensure that h of x belongs to the ball of radius epsilon around h of x0. This is the definition of continuous function. So for all the epsilon, arbitrarily small epsilon, there should exist some delta, so that if your x value is within the delta ball around x0, then your h of x value should be within the epsilon ball around h of x0. So h is continuous at point x0 if it satisfies these conditions related to x0, and if h satisfies this condition related to every single point in this vector space V, then h is called continuous function. So a continuous function is continuous at every point. So this is the depiction. So for example, let us look at this graph. So this is some function f of x, so function of x in some normed space, and then you see there is a point x0 at which we want to determine the continuity. So at this point x0, the value of the function is f of x0, and then this is the region, the ball of radius delta around x0. If you have x within this radius, within this ball of radius delta, then the corresponding f of x will be within the ball of radius, within this range. So this range is ball of radius epsilon around f of x0. So for any arbitrary range of epsilon, if there is a corresponding range in delta which ensure that if the x is within delta, then f of x will be within epsilon, then you will see that then you can say that the function is continuous around the point x0. Okay, we can look at a non-example of a continuous function. This is an example of a function which is not continuous. although this function is continuous at every point, but there is a point. So this is a h of t is a function of t. So at t is equal to 2, so at t is equal to 2, this function is basically having a finite jump, which means that it is not continuous, but we will prove it using the definition of continuity, that this function indeed is not continuous at t is equal to. So this is the statement: h is a function from real number to real number is not continuous at t is equal to 2, because if you define the epsilon, let's suppose define epsilon of ball of radius 1/2, and then for every delta, so if you have any delta range, so this green line range, no matter how small range you pick, the corresponding value of the function within this the corresponding value of the functions of t values within the range delta will be outside this epsilon range. So for example, if you pick that delta, so this is the delta ball of radius delta, so this is t, this is t plus delta, and this is this is t is equal to 2, so this is 2 plus delta, and this is 2 minus delta. So let us suppose we have 2 plus delta by 3, so 2 plus delta by 3 is some point here, so it is 1/3 of the distance between these two lines, and then 2 plus delta by 3 at this point, the corresponding value of the function is 2, so almost 2, which is outside this ball of radius 1/2 around the value 1, which is the value of the function at t is equal to 2. So that is the depiction of how you prove using the definition of continuity that certain function is not continuous. So remember that the definition requires that for all possible epsilon there should be some delta, such that if t is within delta, then h of t should be within epsilon. Here, no matter how small delta you pick, you cannot satisfy this epsilon range. So even if there is one epsilon for which there exists no delta, such that t within the delta ensures that h of t within epsilon, then you have counter example of continuity. You have ruling out of continuity. So that is it. That was the lecture of today. So we briefly go back and we see what we have discussed today. So we go back to the first slide and we look at the lecture we recap the lecture in a couple of minutes. So we started with the definition of convergence of a sequence. So this is the definition of convergence of a sequence, where you see that for every epsilon there must be some capital N, so that if for all the points beyond the capital N there is the distance between any point in the sequence is within the epsilon range of the convergence point x bar. Then we looked at the Cauchy sequence, which is very similar to the converging sequence, but except that there is no point of convergence here. Rather, we discussed the distance between 2 points in a sequence after certain limit capital N. So that's Cauchy sequence. But every Cauchy sequence is converging if the the vector space is complete space. That would mean that the point of convergence lies within the space. Then we looked at contraction mapping. Contraction mapping basically states that two things. First of all, we looked at the definition of a contraction. So contraction by definition is a function which reduces the distance between 2 points by applying, when you apply a function on the 2 points, the distance between the corresponding values of the function is less than the distance between the original points. Then the contraction mapping principle has two claims. First of all, if there is a contraction in a complete norm space, this contraction will always have a unique fixed point. Second is that this contraction can be used to define a sequence of numbers which is a converging sequence. Then we looked at contraction mapping. We looked at how the fixed point can only be unique and it cannot be non-unique, or there cannot be multiple fixed points. Then we also looked at how the Cauchy property holds for a sequence which is defined using this contraction. And then we looked at an example where the contraction mapping principle can be used to solve the algebraic equation ax equal to b. And in order to be able to do that, you first of all has to ensure that a plus identity induced norm must be less than 1. Only if this is true, then you can use contraction mapping to solve this equation. And then we looked at the definition of the continuous function. For all epsilon, there should be some delta such that if the value of the domain points of the function is within delta range, then the value of the corresponding function values will be within the epsilon range. So we looked at this is the delta range and this is the corresponding epsilon range. This is the point at which you are looking for the continuity of the function. Continuity is a point-wise property, but if some function is continuous at all the points, then it is called continuous function. Otherwise you will call the function to be continuous at a certain point. So this is an example of a function which is actually not continuous, and it is not continuous only at a one single point. So being not continuous at a single point would rule out the continuity of the function, although this function is continuous at many points excluding t equal to 2. But overall, since it is discontinuous at t is equal to 2, we will not call this function a continuous function. So that's it for now. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for the next lecture in the series. Thank you.